Welcome everyone back to Truth, Lies and Hair Ties. Today we're going to be talking about the whaling history of Japan, but I'm just going to talk about a few little things beforehand. If you haven't been to this channel before, it's kind of come and get ready with me. I'm going to be creating a hairstyle whilst talking about animals either in captivity or the wild. We're currently in the wild, so you can either follow along or simply listen. Today you're just going to need a few little elastic bands. We're going to sort of create a hairband using our own hair. Very simple, very easy, but quite effective. This is great if you still want to have most of your hair down, but you don't want it all over your face. Okay, so last time I was talking about seaspiracy. And I don't want people to go away thinking, you know, oh my goodness, all fishermen are absolutely horrendous. You know, because obviously there are lots of local fishermen who would never ever think about dumping, you know, their equipment in the ocean. And it's probably, you know, their livelihood. It's what they've sort of grown up with. And I guess, it's difficult, isn't it? I guess if I ever have like an absolute craving for fish, I'd definitely prefer to go down to the docks and see a little fisherman coming back and not being fussy, just asking him, what did you catch today? Yep, cool, no worries, I'll have that. You know, rather than these absolutely massive boats that are going out that, you know, you just cannot trust if there's been any bycatch or not. So I guess it's just a case of trusting your own fishermen. It would be great if I had a local fisherman. I could go down and say, you know, how are you doing? Did you get any bycatch? I think it's almost impossible not to get any bycatch, really. But yeah, I think, do you think that we've just become a little bit greedy? Yes, sorry about my little, this is my hairs on my chin and chin. You know, is it necessary for us to actually have fish, or is it just a luxury for us, really? You know, because it's not necessary. We don't actually need it. Or yeah, have we just become greedy because we can have it? Then yeah, we're going to buy it all the time, but we don't actually have to, especially when we now think that other countries are struggling. You know, fish is their main source of food. And yet we're like, well, we're going to have it because we want the fish. If you think about it, some of these countries, they would go out in tiny little canoes, and perhaps they needed to feed their entire family, which might be, who knows, maybe 8 or 9 people. So it's not a huge amount of fish that they would need to find each day. And if they are struggling just for a small amount of fish, then you know that they are doing too much fishing in the actual oceans. Well, I know this hairstyle, ta-da, it's done. I know it's very, very simple, but I love it and it's great. And I wear this a lot of the time when I just kind of want to let my hair swish around, because for work I'm always having it pinned up. So just one elastic band, tie it at the back underneath, and then voila. I always like to have these little bits out, and sometimes I actually curl these, and against the straight hair it actually looks quite cool. Anyway, okay, back on to whaling and Taiji and dolphins. Yes, we're going to go back to Taiji just for a second and talk a little bit about the dolphin trade, because I found an ex-fisherman, and there was, I think it was on Extra Minutes, and he basically spoke, you know, why he did it for so long and then why he then decided to give up. He started basically straight out of elementary school. His entire family did it. Everyone in the town did it. They ate dolphins from a young age. You know, he was brought up with eating dolphins and whaling. You know, that was in his blood kind of thing. So he didn't ever think it was a bit strange or a bit weird or different or wrong. You know, he just didn't have any of those feelings. But he did say at some point after doing these dolphin drive hunts, he would feel a bit sad. And I think in the end, it was just a build-up of sadness and sorrow. to the point where I think he said something about a bucket, and these emotions went into this bucket and they just got so full that one day, you know, it kind of overflowed, and that's when he decided to stop fishing in 1997. And he said over his years of fishing he must have killed thousands and thousands of dolphins. And here's just a little clip of it now.
Was a little kid, in my heart there was a bucket filled with the feelings of sorrow and regrets. I felt sorry for the dolphins. Of course, this bucket became full, and then I couldn't really suppress it anymore.
I found another video on YouTube, and it was called The Inside of the Dolphin Trade 2020. And this was interesting because, of course, what was closed in 2020? All of the airports. So no one from overseas who were animal activists were able to come into Taiji, because they come every year to film, to document, to, you know, just see what's going on. And so it was kind of up to the locals to help out or document, or, you know, just be there, I guess, watching. So there was one guy called Ren Yabuki, I think that's how you pronounce it, and he is the director of Life Investigation Agency, which is basically a Japanese animal rights group. And he has been there pretty much every day documenting and filming what goes on. And he said the reason he does this is because the fishermen will do whatever they want and they will catch whatever they want.
漁の実際に追い込まれてくる畑尻湾の漁の様子を監視している人っていうのは僕しかいないので、それをもう確実に取らなければいけないっていうことと、子供のイルカや母親のイルカが殺されてるのかとか、そういうことも確実に記録していく。で、その種類と数とそれをきっちり抑えていくっていうこと。
And there was a moment where he was stopped by the police and they said, oh, you know, you're not allowed to film here. And Ren was like, oh, well, I'm not filming anything illegal. And the policeman, one of them, came back and said, yes, but you could film something illegal. Right. Okay. Yeah. Because that totally makes sense. And it was actually Ali, who was the guy in Seaspiracy. He went to Rico Barry and said, oh, look, I'm going to Taiji. Can you just tell me kind of thing to expect when I arrive there? And Rick said, oh, you will be stopped. You'll be followed and you'll be stopped by the police immediately, as soon as you arrive there. And that's exactly what happened to Ali. And of course, that's exactly what happened to Ren. Although it was interesting because Ren said, yeah, they're a bit annoying, but I do feel safer when the police are around, because sometimes the fishermen can get very aggressive. And I hadn't thought about that, but of course they probably don't like being filmed, and if no one else is around, who knows what they'd do, you know, if people got too close. And if anyone's seen The Cove, well, you probably know that some of them get right up in your face and they can get really angry. And yeah, I wouldn't want to find out what else they would actually be capable of doing. So now we're going to talk about whaling. In Taiji, it's pretty much a whaling town. That's what it's known for. And I think it was sort of large-scale whaling began in the 17th century. But of course, whaling in general goes way, way back. But they did mention that whale meat was most popular in the Second World War, which makes complete sense because, of course, that's when they would have been rationing, and perhaps having that other source of food at times might even have been a lifesaver. So, how do you catch a whale? It's called harpooning. So, way back, they used to just have a sort of long stick that had a spike on the end, and that spike almost had like a kind of hook on it, which meant that when it would enter the whale, trying to take it out again, it would be very difficult. It would kind of get stuck. And then on the end of this rod thing, there'd be either like a rope or a chain, and that would be so the fishermen could, you know, drag it in. I'm not quite sure how they managed to do that, because some of those boats back then were pretty damn small. Then they had something called bomb lances, and these were quite popular in the 1960s. This sounded horrible. So once the bomb was inside the whale, it then exploded, which sounds just wonderful, doesn't it? And apparently it was called shoot and salvage because it basically meant once you had shot it, you would need to then quickly go and get it before it sank. So time was not on their side when it came to those types of things. And then there was another one, I think it was called the Belchin bomb lance, and that was on a kind of swivel gun, which I think might have been attached to the boat rather than them just sort of holding it. These days they have something called a harpoon cannon. Again, that's something that's stuck on the side of the boat and a spear kind of shoots out of a gun. Doesn't look very pleasant, and of course it's not immediate death, and of course that's always caused a lot of uproar when it comes to animal activists, because I actually read an article in some of the Norwegian vessels. They said these techniques can sometimes take up to 25 minutes for a whale to die. That's quite a long time to sort of be flailing around in the water. Now, whaling can be very, very dangerous. I read a story that was in 1878 where there was a group of men on a boat. Yes, they managed to find a whale. Brilliant. They, harpooned it. But unfortunately, it was very, very big and very, very strong. And it kind of dragged the boat further and further out to sea. And unfortunately, they decided not to let go. I don't know, maybe they hadn't found anything for the rest of the day and they were like, we're desperate, we're not going to let go. But unfortunately, 100 men lost their lives on that day. So why would they kill whales? Okay, well, the obvious is for their meat. They could eat the blubber, the skin, the organs, all sorts of things. And, they are full of nutritions. These days they're full of something else, but we'll get onto that later on. Oil that they would extract, they would use for oil lamps. That was for the sort of rich back then. If you had a little bit of money, then you could have one of these lovely oil lamps. And baleen was used for quite a few things, and that was basically the whale's filter that was just sort of near its mouth. But I think it can actually become quite tough. I know a long time ago, which I think I mentioned in the other one, they would use for corsets, for boning in corsets, and the hooped skirts they would also use for that as well. They would also use baskets. I found this lovely woven basket, and on top, yes, that little bear is made out of ivory. So it's not really a very animal friendly basket, and you most certainly wouldn't see one of those in my house. The blubber from a whale has widely been used in cosmetics like soaps and lipsticks right up until the 1970s. But I found another article that was actually, I think it said 2018, and it was a Japanese trainer who decided to put red lipstick on a beluga whale. Yeah, just going to show you a clip of that. 据网友爆料，一位疑似大连的鲸豚驯养师在某短视频平台上发了一段视频，边笑边给可爱的海豚宝宝涂上口红，口里说着越来越好看了。网友认为，为了吸引。Now, there are obviously several things wrong with that. First, does she not know that whale blubber used to be used in lipsticks and now you're putting it on a whale? That just seems really wrong. And secondly, I'm not entirely sure it said in her contract that she had to put makeup on the animals there. So as you can imagine, not many people were happy. Apparently it's because she wanted to make the video go viral to help the social media for the marine park or something like that. And it did go viral. But, for all the wrong reasons, loads of animal activists were not happy. PETA were not particularly happy either. And I think they said, I can't believe you've made a majestic animal look like a clown. But the article did carry on to say, we apologise for the trainer's actions. We did not mean to offend, blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, I think it might have just been a momentary kind of bad judgment call. I don't think anyone really told her to do it. I think it was just, you know, she had an idea and she went with it. But not really a great idea. Plus, you know, obviously cosmetics have chemicals in, and these chemicals are probably not great for a beluga whale. To be fair, they're probably not great for us either. That's why at some point, I think it was about 5 years ago, I chucked out all of my makeup and I got loads of new stuff, trying to get it as natural as possible. And if you wanted an idea for a lipstick, you can have and buy one of these. I do love Burt's Bees. It's very yummy and moisturising. It smells fantastic, and it's just wonderful for my lips that are really dry and really, really sensitive. So we know that there was a ban in 1986 against commercial whaling. And we now know that Japan have decided to resume and carry on with commercial whaling.
Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Peter Dobby. Whales were hunted to the brink of extinction until 1986, when a group of countries agreed to temporarily stop whaling for profit, which turned into a semi-international ban. However, conservationists are now worried the species might be facing a similar threat. Many countries continue to hunt whales for what they say are scientific purposes, and Japan, which is one of the leading commercial whaling countries, has now resumed that practice in its waters. It says whaling is part of its culture and can be done in a sustainable way. But as Mariana Hond explains, Japanese palates and tastes have moved on.
Very bad business to move into, because the Japanese people are not eating a lot of whale meat anymore, and to the extent that they are, it's often driven by politics in the local regions. Not by the dietary habits of most Japanese. Now, there are some bars where whale meat still might be served to some customers, but it's not something that's you find in every store around Japan, or is eaten by every person.
So lots of people are thinking, oh, so they didn't do any whaling for 30 years. Well, I mean, that's quite good, isn't it? No, because there was a loophole. Of course, there was a loophole. Many things have a loophole, and they managed to find it. Basically, this is what it said. In the International Convention of the Regulation of Whaling 1946, it says a special permit authorising the national to kill, take and treat whales for purposes of scientific research. So yeah, Japan's scientific programme kills about 1,000 whales per year. Some countries' quotas for commercial whaling can be over 1,000 a year. Some of them, I think, are 1,100, 1,200. So that sounds very similar to commercial whaling. But they get away with it because they can put that scientific label on it. Also, after they've given it, to the scientists, they then sell the whale meat. Because what are they going to do with it? So they're still doing commercial whaling, really, aren't they? But they're just sort of painting it as being something else. So this is, as a scientist, what you're allowed to do. Lethal scientific whaling allows an examination of the whale's stomach contents, combined with information on length, weight and age. Scientists say that they can calculate environmentally sustainable hunting levels. And then, as I said, meat from the whales is sold commercially to help subsidise the programme. Yeah, that makes complete sense. We're going to kill whales to find out if killing whales is sustainable. Yeah, okay. Trying to get my head around that one. Let me know if you do. And it was actually in 2014 that the Australian government ruled in court that Japan weren't using whales for scientific research. In fact, they didn't believe that Japan were trying to find an alternative way to get the research that they apparently needed. And I was thinking, yeah, like, why don't you wait for a whale to wash up on shore dead? Oh, hang on, that's happened quite a lot. In fact, that's happened so much that it's becoming a bit strange. Why don't you want to pick up those whales and find out, oh my goodness, how did they die? Surely that would be more interesting and more actual research into the lives of these animals, rather than just, oh well, nah, let's just take the fit and healthy ones instead. Okay, and this will make you laugh. Apparently there wasn't actually much finding, and the research they did come up with actually had nothing to do with the scientific study of whales. They just went on some weird tantrum about another part of the whale, again, that had nothing to do with the reason that they were actually opening these whales up and researching them. So that must have been really frustrating. And yeah, I think they must have just been sitting there going, yeah, I don't quite believe you, I'm afraid. And someone else who has joined in with commercial whaling is Norway. I say joined in, but actually the ban 30 years ago, they ignored. They've actually just been killing whales every single year. I don't think they even pretended that they were doing it for scientific research. I think they just sort of carried on. And I just read today that their quota for this year was, I think it was about 1,200 and something minke whales is what they want to take from the ocean, which is the same as the previous 2 years. But luckily, I don't think they even got half of that. Some of the years I think they only got about 500. I don't really know the reason for that. I don't know if it was just a bad year, or are the numbers dwindling slightly and they can't find as many because perhaps there aren't as many. So Norway's Minister for Fisheries and Seafood said this statement: Norwegian whaling is about the right to utilise our natural resources. We manage on the basis of scientific knowledge and in a sustainable manner. Yeah, so scientists have also found that there are pollutants in whales, including PCBs. And if you don't know about them, you can look them up. But they don't look particularly nice. And I wonder where their scientists are from. Are they from Norway as well? Do they just say, oh yeah, they're sustainable? And the minister goes, great, cool, that's fine then. That's fine by me. I won't do any of my own research. I'll just let the scientists, you know, decide what to do, and they can make my mind up for me. He then carries on and says, whales are healthy and good food. Yeah, there are other foods that are pretty good for you too, and you can eat them without hurting the ecosystem. And then he finishes with, Norwegians want minke whales on their dinner plate. And I would love saffron with every single meal, but it doesn't mean I'm going to get it. It's a bit like a child coming up to you going, I want to eat a massive chocolate cake for dinner every single night. And usually, being the adult, you would say, well, no, probably along the lines of your teeth would rot and, you know, die. But in this case, it's the sea that will rot and die. So I'm thinking, well, perhaps some of these places, countries, ministers or whatever, do you think maybe they should take a little bit of responsibility for the fact that, are you reading? Are you watching? Are you listening to everything that's going on? Are you taking on board? Are you thinking of changing? Are you thinking of, you know, maybe lowering your quota or something? Because it feels like just because someone's saying, I want this on my dinner plate, everyone's going, oh yes, well, okay. If you want it, we'll give it to you. But surely you've got to see what's happening. But I know it's all down to money in the end, isn't it, really? As long as they're making money, then they probably don't really care. Or do they? Because apparently Norway do actually help quite a lot. There was a lady called Kate O'Connell. She's a marine animal consultant at the Animal Welfare Institute. And she said they are doing amazing things on marine litter, marine plastics, ghost gear, helping to educate people on how to rescue whales who get stuck in ghost gear, but at the same time saying, well, we're going to go whaling. Again, I do find quite a few of these places, you know, we're going to have something not very nice, but then we're just going to cover that up because we're doing lots of good stuff. But that doesn't necessarily make what you're doing right. You're just going to make up for what you're doing wrong. So yeah, it's very difficult, again, to give people a pat on the back when, you know, you're still going whaling. Because what Norway have done, they've actually joined the ocean panel. And they basically, I think there's about 13 nations, they've all got together and said, right, you know, let's try and protect the oceans and, you know, make sure that we can have a future with fish in the sea. So you're like, yay. And so I thought, oh, let's look up Norway's quota for this year, see if it's different, you know, see if it's a little bit lower. But as I said before, nope, it's exactly the same as the previous 2 years. So you've joined this panel to help the oceans, but you're still going whaling. So it's sort of like, we're going to help, but we're not going to help that much. We're going to help a little bit to make ourselves feel good, but not a tremendous amount. And again, you know, I'm only talking about the proper massive, big commercial fisheries. Because I know all over the world there are some just lovely, wonderful little fishing boats that are, you know, as I said, their livelihood is catching fish. But I feel like these massive corporations are coming in and just pilfering everything from the ocean. So there's nothing left for the people who are, you know, really, really desperate for it. And there's this moment in Seaspiracy when he's aboard one of the ships of Sea Shepherd, which I will definitely talk about because I think they're amazing. Anyway, they basically have quite a few ships and they're out in the waters, they're monitoring what's going on, which I think is fantastic. And there's this moment where in between these boats, this tiny little canoe comes out and Ali's looking at them like, what is this tiny little canoe doing out in the middle of nowhere? And the man looks at him and he goes like this. And that's when Ali realizes, oh my God, they're looking for food. They are so far away from their land because they cannot find food and they are hungry. So as I said, Ren Yabuki, he has been out there documenting and filming everything that goes on. There was one thing that he was able to catch actually on camera, and it was this poor minke whale that had been captured, and it was, well, I'll show you a picture here. It was there for 19 days. I think that is a very long time. That's an unusual amount of time for a fisherman. You know, you capture something, you might have it for a couple of days, deciding what to do with it. Are you selling it here, there, whatever? But 19 days, you know, and there were lots of newspaper articles like, what's happening with this whale? Is it going to be let go? You know, it's been there for a long time. And Ren was actually able to, you know, capture all of it. And if you don't want to hear about anything gruesome, then you might just want to skip the next 20 seconds because it's not particularly nice how they killed this poor whale. So what they did is they tied a rope around its tail fin and forced its head under the water, where it took around 20 minutes to die. Death in such situations usually occurs because the whale clamps its blowhole shut and suffocates. And again, that doesn't exactly sound humane, does it? Oh dear, that's the end. I feel like that's not a particularly happy note to end on at all. And I definitely feel sorry for that poor minke whale, but I'm pleased that Ren has been out there. He's sort of doing all the work for those animal activists that can't quite fly out just yet. They might be able to now, perhaps not. So I hope everyone's getting on okay. I know things are slowly opening up now. Ta-da! We don't have to freeze outside drinking a really cold beer. I remember one time I stayed out for 2.5 hours. I was frozen within the first 5 minutes, but I was determined to stay out for as long as I possibly could. But now we're allowed inside, and let's just hope that it's going to stay like that.